planet was silent except for the sound of wind passing through the tall silver trees. The human camp had been built near the edge of the forest, where the soil was strong enough to hold machines and shelters. Most of the crew were busy with mapping, collecting samples, or fixing the power lines that often broke down in the strange weather. Among them was Tom, a technician who preferred quiet work to loud meetings. Tom had been sent to repair a small survey device that had stopped sending signals. It was placed deeper into the forest, far from the safety of camp. He carried only a basic tool pack and a small light, since the sun on this world often dipped behind heavy clouds and turned everything into shadow. As he walked, Tom noticed how different this place was from Earth. The trees stretched higher than towers, their bark shining like glass. The ground was soft with glowing moss, and insect-like shapes flew past him with gentle buzzing. He was careful not to disturb them. The crew had been warned not to harm the native life unless attacked. So far, none of the animals had shown interest in humans, which gave him a sense of calm. After an hour of walking, Tom found the broken device near a small hill. It had been knocked down by falling branches. He bent to pick it up and began to work. His hands moved with skill, connecting wires and checking circuits. He enjoyed this kind of task because machines did not argue or complain. They either worked or they did not, and it was his job to make them right. Suddenly, he heard a sharp cry. It was faint at first, like a small voice carried by the wind. Tom froze, listening carefully. The sound came again, louder this time. It was not the voice of his crew. It was higher, trembling, almost like a child in fear. Tom stood up and looked toward the trees. The forest grew darker in that direction, shadows dancing across the glowing moss. He felt unsure. His duty was to repair the device and return. But the cry pulled at him. He could not ignore it. With a quick decision, he picked up his tool pack and walked toward the sound. The cries grew clearer as he moved forward. He pushed through branches, careful not to make noise. When he reached a small clearing, he saw the source. A small alien child stood there, cornered against a rock. Its body was thin, covered in pale blue skin that shimmered under the light. Large black eyes looked up with terror. The child wore a simple cloth around its shoulders, torn and dirty. But what caught Tom's attention more were the creatures surrounding it. 4 beast-like animals circled the child. They looked like a mix of wolves and reptiles, their bodies low and muscular, tails whipping side to side. Their jaws opened wide, showing rows of sharp teeth. They were ready to strike. The child screamed again, pressing back against the rock. Tom knew if he did nothing, the beasts would attack within seconds. He felt fear rise in his chest, but his legs moved before his mind could stop them. He grabbed a metal rod from his pack and shouted loudly to distract the creatures. The beasts turned their heads toward him, their glowing eyes fixed on the new target. Tom waved the rod, banging it against his tool pack to make noise. The sound echoed through the forest. The beasts growled, confused for a moment. That moment was enough. Tom rushed forward, placing himself between the child and the attackers. One of the beasts leapt at him. Tom swung the rod with all his strength, striking the side of its head. The creature yelped and rolled away. Another snapped its jaws near his arm, but he shoved the pack in its mouth, saving himself from the bite. He kicked hard, sending it stumbling back. The child watched with wide eyes, frozen in shock. Tom shouted, "Run behind me!" The words were useless because the child did not know his language, but his tone was clear. The child crawled behind him, clinging to the rock for safety. The remaining beasts growled and circled again. Tom's heart pounded. He knew he could not fight them all for long. He reached into his pack and pulled out a small repair torch. It was not a weapon, but when lit, it produced a bright flame. He pressed the switch and the torch burst to life with a sharp hiss. The creatures stopped, blinking at the sudden light. Tom waved the flame, shouting as loud as he could. The beasts backed away slowly. They were hunters of shadow, not fire. With one final growl, they turned and ran into the forest, disappearing into the dark. Tom breathed heavily, lowering the torch. His arms shook from fear and effort. He turned to look at the child. It was trembling, tears running down its cheeks, but it was alive. He knelt down, keeping his voice gentle. "It's okay. You're safe now." Of course, the child did not understand his words, but the soft tone made it relax a little. It stepped closer, reaching out its small hand. Hesitant, Tom offered his hand in return. The child touched it, then held on tightly, refusing to let go. Tom felt a strange mix of relief and responsibility. He had saved a life, but now he was alone in the forest, with this small being depending on him. He looked at the child's clothes again and noticed fine stitching on the edges, unlike the rough materials seen on other native creatures. This was not an ordinary wanderer. The child tugged at his hand, pointing deeper into the forest. Its large eyes pleaded with him. Tom did not know what the child wanted, but he could not leave it alone. He picked up his tool pack and nodded. Together they began walking carefully through the woods. As they moved, the child stayed close, never releasing his hand. Tom tried to comfort it with small smiles, though he felt uncertain inside. What if more creatures attacked? What if his crew came searching and found him with this being? The path grew wider and the trees opened to reveal a ridge. From there, Tom could see a distant glow in the mountains. Towers of light rose high, shining like stars against the dark sky. He realized it was a city, unlike anything humans had yet seen. The child pointed toward it eagerly, then looked at Tom as if begging him to continue. Tom sighed. He knew his duty was to return to camp and report, but one look at the child's face made his decision clear. He could not abandon it. Whatever danger or mystery lay ahead, he would walk into it. As night settled across the forest, the strange pair moved closer to the glowing city, unaware of how this simple act of kindness would change Tom's fate forever. The forest grew darker as Tom and the alien child walked hand in hand. The glowing moss gave them light, but every sound made Tom's heart beat faster. He was not sure if more of those beasts were following. Still, he kept moving forward because the child seemed to know the way. Its small steps were quick, and its eyes often turned toward the shining city in the distance. Tom thought of his crew back at camp. By now they would notice he had not returned. Maybe they would try to contact him by radio, but the thick forest walls often blocked signals. He felt guilty for not finishing his task, yet when he looked down at the child holding his hand, he knew he had made the right choice. Leaving the child behind was not an option. After hours of careful walking, the trees thinned out. A wide stone path appeared, leading straight toward the mountains. Strange symbols glowed along the edges of the road. The child's face brightened with hope as it pulled Tom forward. At the end of the path, tall figures waited. Their armor shone under the moonlight, and long spears rested in their hands. Their eyes glowed like crystals, and their faces were sharper than any humans. They were guards of the alien city. The guards froze when they saw Tom, but when their eyes fell on the child, their bodies stiffened with shock. One guard stepped forward, his voice deep and powerful. Though Tom did not understand the words, the tone carried surprise and disbelief. The child let go of Tom's hand only to run into the guard's arms. The soldier looked relieved, then raised his head and gave an order. Two guards moved quickly, surrounding Tom with their weapons pointed. Tom raised his hands, trying to show he meant no harm. The child cried out, pushing the guard's arm and running back to Tom. It held his hand again, glaring at the soldiers. The guards looked at one another, confused. It was clear the child refused to let Tom go. Finally, the first guard gave a signal. The soldiers lowered their weapons but kept a close watch. They led Tom and the child down the glowing road. As they walked, the great city grew larger. Towers of stone and crystal rose into the night sky. Bridges of light connected them like threads of silver. Gates taller than mountains opened slowly, and inside was a world unlike anything Tom had ever seen. The streets were filled with shining lamps that floated in the air. Water flowed in channels carved into the ground, glowing faintly as if alive. Buildings curved upward like living shells, decorated with symbols and gems. Everywhere Tom looked, there was beauty mixed with power. The guards led them through the city until they reached a massive palace carved into the mountainside. Its walls sparkled like diamond, and its doors were covered in carvings of stars and rivers. The guards knelt as the doors opened, and Tom realized they were entering the home of great rulers. Inside, the air was cool and filled with soft music. At the end of the grand hall stood a tall figure on a throne of light. She wore robes that shone like water under the moon, and her crown was made of crystal that glowed with energy. Her eyes were deep and sharp, filled with both kindness and authority. She was the queen. The child ran forward, crying out in joy. The queen rose quickly, rushing down the steps to embrace the child. She held it tightly, her face full of relief and love. Tom watched silently, realizing the truth. This was not just any child. This was the royal child of the alien people. The queen looked up and noticed Tom for the first time. Her eyes studied him carefully, then moved to the guards. They spoke quickly in their language, their voices carrying both worry and explanation. The queen listened, then turned back to Tom. With slow, graceful steps, she walked closer. Her presence was strong, and Tom felt both fear and respect. The child grabbed her hand, then pointed at Tom, speaking quickly in the alien tongue. The queen looked surprised, then thoughtful. One of the guards stepped forward and handed her a small glowing stone. She touched it gently, and the stone shone brighter. Then she spoke again, but this time the words came out in broken human language. "You save my child," she said slowly. Tom blinked in shock. He had not expected her to speak his language, even in such simple form. He nodded. "Yes, I found her in the forest. Beast attacked. I tried to help." The queen's face softened. She placed her hand over her heart and bowed slightly. "You brave. You protect when danger come. My child's safe because of you." Tom lowered his head respectfully. "I only did what anyone should do." The child ran back to him, grabbing his hand again. It refused to let go. The queen watched this closely, her eyes narrowing as if thinking deeply. Finally, she raised her head high. "You not leave, you stay. My child needs you." Tom's heart skipped a beat. He tried to explain. "I have a crew. I have to return to them. They are waiting for me." The queen shook her head. "No, you save life, bond made. My people law say protector stay. If child choose, protector cannot go." The words struck Tom with both honor and fear. He had saved a child, but now he was being tied to a fate he did not choose. He glanced at the child, who looked up at him with trust and affection. The guard stepped back, giving space. The queen gestured toward a chamber and said, "Rest, safe here. Tomorrow we speak more." Tom followed, still in shock. The child refused to leave his side, walking with him into the guest chamber. The room was grand, filled with soft beds, golden light, and walls painted with stars. But Tom barely noticed the beauty. His mind was heavy with questions. Why was the queen so insistent? What did bondmaid mean in their law? And what would happen to his crew if he did not return? The child sat beside him on the bed, resting its head on his arm. Tom sighed and looked at the ceiling. He had stepped into the unknown, and there was no turning back. That night, Tom could not sleep. He thought of the beasts in the forest, the shining city, and the queen's eyes. Most of all, he thought of the child who trusted him so deeply. For the first time in his life, Tom felt that his simple courage had placed him at the center of something far greater than himself. He closed his eyes, knowing tomorrow would bring answers, but also more questions than he could imagine. The queen had made her choice, and it seemed his future no longer belonged only to him. The first light of morning entered the alien city, spreading across its tall towers and glowing bridges. Tom woke in the grand chamber, his mind still heavy from the queen's words. The alien child was curled beside him, sleeping peacefully. For a moment, Tom forgot where he was. The walls, the soft light, and the strange music in the air reminded him this was not Earth and not the human camp. He was in the heart of a royal palace, surrounded by people who did not fully trust him. Tom rose quietly, but the child stirred and opened its eyes. At once it sat up and reached for his hand. Tom gave a small smile and let the child hold on. He realized the bond was real, not only in the law of the aliens, but in the heart of the child itself. A soft sound came from the door. It opened slowly and a servant entered. She bowed and spoke in her language, then gestured for Tom to follow. Tom looked at the child, and it nodded eagerly as if to say this was safe. Together, they walked through bright halls decorated with shining stones and pictures of stars. Guards stood everywhere, their eyes following Tom closely. They entered the great hall again. The queen waited on her throne, her crown glowing with morning light. Around her were nobles dressed in robes of many colors. Their faces were calm, but their eyes were sharp, studying the human with suspicion. The queen raised her hand, and silence filled the room. She looked at Tom, then at the nobles. In her broken but clear human speech, she said, "This human saved royal child. Our laws say protector stay. Bond made by courage cannot break. Yet many here doubt. They ask, is human worthy? The nobles began to murmur. Some nodded in agreement, others frowned. Tom felt the weight of their stares. He did not understand their language, but he understood their doubt. The queen stood. "We will see. He will prove if heart of human strong," she looked at Tom. "You must show who you are. Not by words. By actions." Tom hesitated. "What do you mean?" Before she could answer, one noble stepped forward. His robe was deep red and his eyes shone with pride. He spoke in the alien tongue, his voice firm. The queen listened, then turned to Tom. "Lord Varen say human weak. He say you protect only by chance, not by strength. He demand test." Tom felt unease rise in his chest. "A test?" The queen nodded. "Not fight to kill. Test of spirit. Test of courage." She gestured toward the child. "If you fail, bond end. Child must choose again. If you pass, all will see you not weak." The child gripped his hand tightly, shaking its head as if begging him not to be taken away. Tom looked at the queen and gave a slow nod. "I will take the test," the hall filled with whispers. The queen raised her hand, silencing them. She spoke with authority. "Then it is decided. Prepare the trial." Later that day, Tom was led to a great arena carved into the mountainside. The walls rose high and thousands of citizens filled the seats. The air was alive with energy, a mix of excitement and doubt. At the center stood Tom, wearing only simple armor given by the guards. He had no weapons but a wooden staff. The queen sat above on a throne of stone, the child beside her. The child's eyes were full of worry, never leaving Tom. A gate opened and a creature stepped out. It was not the same beasts from the forest, but larger, its body covered with scales and its eyes glowing with fire. It roared, shaking the ground. The crowd cheered, though some looked nervous. Tom gripped the staff tightly. He had faced danger before, but never like this. He remembered the queen's words. This was not about killing. It was about showing courage. The creature charged, its steps heavy and fast. Tom rolled aside, barely avoiding the strike. Dust rose around him. He stood quickly, heart racing. The creature turned and roared again. Tom thought fast. A direct fight would end quickly and not in his favor. He needed to use his human strength of mind. He looked around the arena and noticed tall pillars supporting the walls. The creature was strong but not smart. He ran toward one pillar, shouting to draw the beast's attention. It followed, its tail sweeping across the ground. Tom leapt aside and the tail struck the pillar, shaking it. Cracks spread across the stone, the crowd gasped. Tom realized his plan might work. He repeated the move, each time guiding the creature toward another pillar. Again and again the beast struck until the pillars weakened. Finally, with a loud crack, one pillar broke, sending heavy stones crashing down. The beast stumbled, its leg trapped under the fallen rocks. It roared in anger, struggling to free itself. Tom stood tall, raising his staff high. He did not strike the beast again. Instead, he lowered the staff and looked at the queen. Silence spread across the arena. Everyone understood. Tom had won not by strength of arm but by cleverness and control. He had shown courage without cruelty. The queen rose from her seat, her voice strong. The human proves worthy. He faced fear and he not run. He used mind, not only force. This is true strength. The crowd erupted in cheers. Even Lord Varen, though frowning, bowed his head in respect. The child ran down from the royal seat and threw its arms around Tom. The people watched in silence, seeing how deep the bond had grown. Tom knelt, hugging the child back, his heart heavy with both relief and new responsibility. After the trial, Tom was led back to the palace. That evening, the queen invited him to dine with her and the nobles. The hall was filled with food that glowed softly, fruits and meats unlike anything he had seen. Servants poured drinks into crystal cups. The queen spoke to him gently, translating through the glowing stone when needed. "You showed all my people what human is, not weak, not cruel, but brave. Many now respect you. Still you must know. Danger grows. Enemies move in shadows. That is why I ask you to stay. My child trusts you and I trust you too." Tom listened carefully. He wanted to return to his crew, but he also saw the truth in her words. If he left now, the child would be unprotected, and the queen's enemies might strike again. He looked at the child, who smiled at him with pure trust. He took a deep breath. "I will stay for now. I cannot turn away." The queen nodded slowly. "Then you are not guest only. You are guardian." The nobles raised their cups in respect. Tom felt a mix of pride and worry. He had entered the forest as a simple technician, but now he was being shaped into something greater. That night, as he sat in the quiet of his chamber, he thought of the test, the creature, and the cheers of the crowd. He thought of the Queen's trust and the child's smile. And he realized that the bond was no longer a chain tying him against his will. It was a choice he was making with his own heart. For the first time since leaving Earth, Tom felt that his place was not only among his human crew but also here, in this alien world where loyalty and courage were needed more than ever. The palace had grown quiet after the trial, yet Tom felt no peace. Days passed and he began to see more than the beauty of the alien city. He noticed whispers in the halls, guards standing with tense faces and shadows moving where they should not. The Queen had been right. Enemies were close, waiting for the moment to strike. Tom spent most of his time with the child, who never left his side. The bond had become stronger. They played in the gardens, walked through the shining streets, and sometimes sat together on the palace walls watching the towers of light glow under the stars. The child laughed often, and Tom found himself smiling more than he ever had. But in his heart, he stayed alert. One evening, as he walked the halls with the child, a loyal guard named Ryan approached. He spoke quickly in his language, then used the glowing stone to share his words. "We hear of plots. Faction grows bold. They want to remove the Queen. They may strike soon." Tom frowned. "How soon?" Ryan looked troubled. "Days, maybe less. They wait for moment when Queen unguarded." His eyes moved to the child. "They know child is key. If they take child, Queen will break." Tom felt a cold fear rise inside him. He looked down at the child, who held his hand and looked back with trust. He tightened his grip. "They will not take the child. Not while I live." That night, Tom could not sleep. He stayed awake, listening to every sound. When morning came, the Queen summoned him. She stood in the great hall, her crown shining as ever, but her face carried weight. She spoke through the stone. "I feel storm coming. Enemies move in shadows, but soon they will show. You proved courage in trial. Now I ask more. Protect my child even if palace falls." Tom bowed his head. "I give you my word." The Queen placed her hand on his shoulder. "Then you are not only guardian, you are shield of the royal blood." That evening, the attack came. The first sign was the sound of horns outside the city walls. Then came fire streaking across the sky. Towers shook as blasts of energy struck them. The city bells rang, calling soldiers to defend. From the palace balcony, Tom saw dark ships in the sky, pouring soldiers onto the streets below. The Queen shouted commands, and her guards rushed into formation. Citizens fled into shelters. The palace walls trembled as enemy forces pressed closer. Rian appeared at Tom's side, his face set with grim resolve. "They come for the child. We must move now." Tom lifted the child into his arms. "Where?" Ryan pointed to a hidden passage. "Old tunnels below palace. They lead to safe ground, but before they could move, the palace gates exploded inward. Enemy warriors poured in, clad in black armor, their eyes burning with hate. The Queen's guards met them with swords and spears, and the hall erupted into battle. Tom's instincts took over. He ran with the child, guiding Rian toward the hidden passage, but enemy soldiers blocked their path. Tom grabbed a tool from his pack, a small device that sparked with energy. He slammed it onto the ground, and a burst of light blinded the attackers. With quick steps, he pushed through. The child clung to him tightly, burying its face against his chest. Tom kept moving, heart pounding. He had no training as a soldier, yet every choice he made was clear. Protect the child. That was all that mattered. The passage opened into a narrow corridor lit by faint crystals. Tom ran, his breath sharp, while Ryan guarded their back. From behind came the clash of metal and shouts of war. Halfway through the tunnel, a group of enemies appeared ahead. Tom stopped, gripping the staff he had used in the trial. His hands shook, but he stood firm. The soldiers advanced, blades raised. Tom shouted, his voice echoing. "You will not take the child!" They lunged forward. Tom swung the staff with all his strength, striking the first in the chest. Ryan leapt beside him, cutting down another with his blade. Together they pushed through, each strike fueled by desperation. When the last soldier fell, Tom stood gasping for air. His arms ached, but the child still held him tightly. Ryan gave him a nod of respect. "You fight like true warrior." At last they reached the end of the tunnel. A hidden door opened into a quiet garden outside the palace walls. But the battle had spread even here. Fires burned in the distance and enemy troops searched the grounds. Ryan pointed to a small tower. "Safe place there, go, I will hold them off." Tom shook his head. "Not alone. We go together." But before more words could be said, enemy arrows flew, striking the ground near them. Ryan raised his shield, blocking the path. "Go now. Child needs you more than I do." Tom hesitated, his chest heavy with conflict. But the child pulled his hand, urging him forward. With sorrow in his eyes, Tom nodded. "Stay alive, Ryan." He ran toward the tower, carrying the child. Behind him, Ryan's battle cry filled the air as he met the enemy head-on. Inside the tower, Tom barred the door and hurried up the stairs. At the top, he found a small chamber with windows overlooking the city. Smoke rose from the streets, but the palace still stood. The Queen's forces fought with courage, holding back wave after wave. Tom placed the child down gently. "Stay here. Do not move." The child shook its head and clung to him. Tears filled its eyes. Tom knelt, pressing a hand to its shoulder. "I will not leave you. I promise." Suddenly the door below shattered. Heavy steps climbed the stairs. Tom grabbed the staff again, planting his feet firmly. The child hid behind him, its small hands gripping his shirt. The first enemy soldier appeared at the top. Tom swung, striking his helmet with a loud crack. Another followed, and Tom pushed him back with all his strength. But more kept coming. His arms screamed with pain, yet he refused to fall. Each strike, each push was fueled by one thought: protect the child. The enemy shouted in anger, but Tom's will burned stronger. Then came silence. The soldiers retreated suddenly. Tom stood panting, confused. From below, a new figure rose. He wore black armor richer than the others, and his eyes glowed red. His presence filled the chamber with dread. The child whimpered in fear. Tom tightened his grip on the staff. The figure spoke in deep tones, using the human tongue. "Step aside, human." "The child belongs to us." Tom spat dust from his lips. "Not while I breathe." The enemy leader smiled darkly. "Then you will die today." He charged, his blade cutting the air. Tom blocked with the staff, the impact nearly breaking his arms. The force drove him back, but he held on. He struck back, aiming for the weak points in the armor. Sparks flew, but the leader did not fall. The fight raged in the small chamber, every strike shaking the walls. Tom's body ached, yet he refused to yield. At last the enemy lifted his blade high for a killing blow. Tom thought fast. He dropped low, rolling aside. The blade struck the stone floor, cracking it. With all his strength, Tom thrust the staff into the leader's chest, driving him against the wall. The leader roared, swinging wildly, but Tom did not let go. He pushed with everything he had until the leader stumbled back and fell through the broken window. The sound of his fall echoed into the night. Tom collapsed to his knees, gasping for air. The staff slipped from his hands. The child ran to him, hugging him tightly, crying against his shoulder. Tom held the child close, his own tears mixing with sweat and dust. Outside, horns sounded across the city. The enemy forces were retreating. The Queen's guards had turned the tide, pushing the attackers back. Soon, soldiers reached the tower, finding Tom still holding the child. Their faces showed awe and respect. Word spread quickly. The human had faced the enemy leader and lived. Later, when Tom returned to the palace, the Queen stood waiting. Her robes were torn from battle, but her crown still shone. She looked at him with eyes full of both sorrow and pride. "You kept your word," she said. "My child lives because of you. You fought as shield of royal blood." Tom bowed his head, too tired to speak. The child refused to leave his side, holding his hand with fierce devotion. That night, the fires in the city slowly faded, and the people began to rebuild. But Tom knew the war was not over. This was only the beginning. The enemies would come again, and when they did, he would be ready. For now, he had done what he promised. He had protected the child even against impossible odds, and in the eyes of the Queen and in the hearts of her people, Tom was no longer just a human visitor. He was their guardian. The city healed slowly after the battle. Fires had been put out. The fallen were buried with honor, and the towers of light glowed again in the night. Yet the memory of the attack remained heavy in the hearts of the people. They had seen the enemy's strength and cruelty, but they had also seen courage they did not expect. They had seen a human stand against darkness to protect their royal child. Tom became a name spoken in every corner of the city. Children pointed at him when he walked the streets, and elders bowed their heads with respect. Soldiers clapped his shoulder, calling him brother in their tongue. But though many now praised him, Tom's heart was not at ease. He sat often in the palace gardens with the child by his side. The flowers glowed in colors of blue and gold, and small streams ran between them. Yet even in this peace, Tom's thoughts returned to his human crew. They were still out there waiting, wondering what had become of him. He had chosen to stay during the danger, but what of his future now? One evening, as the stars rose, the queen herself came to the garden. She wore no crown, only a simple robe, but her presence carried the same strength. The child ran to her, laughing and holding her hand, before pulling her toward Tom. The queen sat across from him, her eyes calm. "You have done what no one else could. You faced the enemy leader and lived. My child breathes because of you. My city stands because of you. Tell me, Tom, what do you seek now?" Tom looked down at his hands. "I do not know. I only did what I had to. But my people, my crew, they wait for me. I left them without a word." The queen listened with care. "I understand. Your duty to your kind is strong. But know this. My law binds protector to child, and my child is chosen. She will not let you go." The child, sitting beside Tom, nodded quickly and held his arm tightly. Her large black eyes shone with trust. Tom felt his chest tighten. He could not deny the bond. He cared for her as if she were his own family. The queen continued, "I will not command you to stay, but if you leave, my enemies will return. They wait for weakness. With you here, they fear. With you gone, they strike again. And my child?" Her heart will break. Tom closed his eyes for a moment. The weight of the choice pressed on him. He wanted to return to his crew, yet he also knew the truth. His actions had tied him to this place in ways deeper than law. The queen rose slowly. "Think well. Tomorrow the council meets. There we decide the path forward for my people. Your voice will matter. Rest tonight, Tom. The choice is yours." That night, Tom could not sleep. The child lay beside him, breathing softly, but he stared at the ceiling. His thoughts moved between the camp of his crew and the glowing city, between Earth and this world. He remembered the trial in the arena, the battle in the tower, and the eyes of the queen when she thanked him. He knew his life had changed forever. At dawn, the palace bells rang. The council gathered in the great hall. Nobles filled the room, their robes bright with color. Soldiers stood at the walls, their armor polished after the long night of repair. The queen sat upon her throne, and beside her the child sat holding Tom's hand. The queen lifted her hand. "Today we speak of future. Our city was attacked. Our enemies will not rest. We must stand stronger than before, and we must decide what place the human will hold among us." Lord Varon, the noble who once doubted Tom, stepped forward. His voice was firm but respectful. "I was wrong. The human has proven his heart. He fought not for power, not for glory, but for the child. I bow to his courage." Other nobles nodded, speaking in agreement. The hall echoed with voices of respect. The queen raised her hand again, and silence returned. She turned to Tom. "Now we ask you, will you stay with us as guardian of royal blood, or will you return to your people?" Tom felt the eyes of everyone upon him. He looked at the queen, then at the child still holding him. He spoke slowly, his voice steady. "I cannot forget my crew. They are my people. But I also cannot turn my back on this bond. I made a promise, and I will not break it." The queen leaned forward. "What is your choice?" Tom drew a deep breath. "I will stay. Not because law forces me. Not because fear holds me. I stay because I choose to protect this child, and I choose to stand with your people. If my crew seeks me, I will tell them the same. This is where I belong now." The hall filled with voices of approval. Soldiers struck their spears against the ground, and nobles bowed their heads. The queen rose and placed her hand on Tom's shoulder. "Then let it be known. Tom of the humans is guardian of royal blood. He is ally of our people. His courage is our shield." The child hugged him tightly, her face full of joy. Tom felt both relief and finality. His choice was made. From that day forward, Tom's life changed fully. He trained with the queen's soldiers, learning their ways of battle. They also learned from him, adopting his human tools and clever ideas. The city grew stronger, prepared for the next attack. The queen often sought his counsel, asking him to share the human way of thinking. She valued his simple yet practical ideas. The people, once doubtful, now greeted him with respect. He was no longer seen as outsider, but as part of their world. Months passed, and Tom found peace in his new role. Yet he never forgot his human crew. Sometimes he stood on the palace walls, looking at the sky, wondering if they searched for him. He hoped they would understand his choice if they ever learned the truth. The child grew healthier and happier, never leaving his side. She laughed freely again, no longer haunted by fear. Her bond with Tom became a story told across the city, a tale of courage that gave hope to the people. One evening, the Queen stood beside him on the balcony. The stars shone bright above. She spoke softly. "You gave up much to stay here. Do you regret?" Tom looked out at the towers glowing with light, at the people walking below with new strength, and at the child playing in the gardens. He shook his head. "No, I found something here I did not know I was searching for. A purpose," the Queen smiled faintly. "Then you are truly one of us." The war was not over. Enemies still waited beyond the mountains. But Tom no longer felt alone. He had a people to protect, a queen who trusted him, and a child who loved him as family. And so the story of the human who saved the alien child became a legend, a tale of how one act of courage created a bond stronger than law, stronger than fear, and strong enough to shape the fate of two worlds. In the end, Tom realized that humanity's greatest power was not in weapons or machines, but in the heart. It was in the choice to protect, to stay loyal, and to love beyond all boundaries. That was the gift he carried, and that was why the Queen would never let him go.